You need
You
to
need
leave.
to leave. Immediately. Excuse me? Get
The
out!
classroom door slammed shut in her face. Through the small window, Dr. Janelle Foster could see 35 students turning in their seats, staring at the commotion. Could see the teacher, Mrs. Linda Crawford, standing with her arms crossed, blocking the entrance like a security guard. Janelle took a breath, tried again, knocked on the door gently. The door opened 2 inches. I already told you, Mrs. Crawford hissed through the gap. Parent-teacher conferences are scheduled through the office. You can't just show up at my classroom during instructional time demanding to see your child. I'm not a parent, Janelle said calmly. She was a black woman in her early 40s, dressed professionally in a gray suit, her natural hair styled in an elegant twist. She carried a leather briefcase and wore understated jewelry. Everything about her said professional. I'm Dr. Janelle Foster. I'm from the State Education Department. I have a scheduled classroom observation. I don't care who you say you are, Mrs. Crawford interrupted. I don't have any observations scheduled today. And even if I did, you can't just walk into my classroom without proper identification and authorization. This is a secure campus. I have identification. Janelle reached for her briefcase. Don't. Mrs. Crawford's voice sharpened. Don't reach into your bag. Keep your hands where I can see them. Janelle froze. Excuse me. I said keep your hands visible. I don't know who you are or what you want, but I'm not letting you rifle through a bag that could contain anything. Mrs. Crawford pulled out her phone. I'm calling security. You can explain yourself to them. Mrs. Crawford, I'm a state education official. I sent you an email 3 weeks ago confirming this observation. I have documentation. Anyone can fake an email. Anyone can claim to be from the state. Mrs. Crawford's eyes narrowed, taking in Janelle's appearance. You don't look like any education official I've ever met. You look like someone trying to get access to my students. And I will not put children at risk because some random woman shows up claiming authority she doesn't have. Through the door window, students were openly watching now. Some had their phones out. Others whispered to each other. This was becoming a scene. Mrs. Crawford, please. Janelle's voice remained calm, but urgency crept in. I understand your caution, but I am Dr. Janelle Foster. I'm the Director of Curriculum and Standards for the State Education Department. I'm here to conduct your annual teaching evaluation. If you'd just let me show you my credentials. I'm not letting you show me anything until security verifies who you are. Mrs. Crawford spoke loudly enough for the class to hear. Students, I want you to know that your safety is my top priority. I will not allow unauthorized individuals into this classroom. That's why I'm following proper protocol. She turned back to Janelle, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. I know what this is. You're probably some parent who's upset about a grade, pretending to be from the state, so I'll let you in. Or maybe you're from the media trying to catch me off guard. Either way, I'm not falling for it. I'm neither of those things, Janelle said, her patience wearing thin. I'm a state official conducting a scheduled observation, an observation that will determine whether your teaching certification is renewed this year. Mrs. Crawford's face flushed. Are you threatening me? Because that sounds like a threat. That sounds like someone trying to intimidate me into ignoring security protocols. It's not a threat. It's a fact. Your certification review is due next month. This observation is part of that process. If you prevent me from conducting it, that's also going to be noted in your file. My file, Mrs. Crawford repeated sarcastically. Right. Well, MY file shows 28 years of excellent teaching, awards, commendations, a spotless record. So if you're really from the state, you'd know that I'm not someone who needs surprise observations from people who won't even show proper identification. I tried to show you identification. You told me not to reach in my bag. Because I don't know what's in that bag. You could have a weapon. You could be dangerous. Mrs. Crawford's voice rose again. Students, remember what we learned about stranger danger? This is exactly what that means. Someone shows up, claims to be an authority figure, tries to gain access to you. This is why we have security protocols. Janelle felt something cold settle in her stomach. This wasn't just overzealous security consciousness. This was something else. something she'd experienced too many times before. She looked at Mrs. Crawford, at the fear and suspicion in her eyes, at the way she stood blocking the door like Janelle was a threat, at the assumption written all over her face that a black woman in a suit couldn't possibly be a high-ranking education official. Mrs. Crawford, Janelle said quietly, I need you to think very carefully about what's happening right now, about why you're reacting this way, about what assumptions you're making. I'm making no assumptions. I'm following security protocol. If I were white, Janelle interrupted, her voice still calm but carrying unmistakable weight, would you be reacting this way? If a white woman in a suit had shown up for a scheduled observation, would you have slammed the door in her face, told her not to reach for identification, accused her of being dangerous? Mrs. Crawford's face went red. How dare you make this about race? This has nothing to do with race. This is about safety, about protecting my students from unauthorized individuals who refuse to follow proper procedures. I'm following proper procedures. You're not. Janelle pulled out her phone. I'm calling Principal Mitchell right now. He can come verify my identity and explain to you why preventing a state education official from conducting a scheduled observation is a terminable offense. You do that, Mrs. Crawford said, her voice cold, and I'll be filing a complaint about you for harassment, intimidation, and attempting to use racial accusations to bully your way into my classroom. She stepped back and slammed the door fully closed, locked it from the inside. Through the window, Janelle could see Mrs. Crawford addressing her students, gesturing animatedly, clearly explaining why she just locked out a dangerous stranger. 35 students stared back at their teacher. Several were still recording on their phones. What Mrs. Crawford didn't know, what her prejudice and arrogance had blinded her to, was that Dr. Janelle Foster wasn't just here to observe her teaching. She was here to decide whether Riverside High School kept its state accreditation, whether the school remained eligible for federal funding, whether the entire faculty, including Mrs. Crawford, would have jobs next year. And the decision had just become a lot easier. In approximately 8 minutes, Principal Mitchell was going to arrive at this classroom. In 10 minutes, Mrs. Crawford was going to realize who she'd just locked out. And in 15 minutes, her 28-year teaching career was going to end. Not because of one bad observation, but because she'd let her racism destroy everything she'd built. Let me take you back 6 weeks, to when Dr. Janelle Foster received the anonymous complaint that brought her to Riverside High School. The email had come through the State Education Department's confidential reporting system. No name attached. Just a desperate plea. I'm a student at Riverside High School. Our English teacher, Mrs. Crawford, treats black students differently than white students. She gives us lower grades for the same work. She calls on us less in class. She makes comments about our attitude and our effort that she never makes to white students. When we complain, we're told we're being too sensitive. When our parents complain, they're dismissed. Please investigate. We deserve better. Janelle had read hundreds of complaints like this over her 15 years in the State Department. Most were exaggerations. Some were misunderstandings. A few were legitimate grievances that could be resolved with conversation and training. But something about this one felt different. Felt urgent. Felt like the kind of systematic discrimination that could destroy students' futures while hiding behind high standards and objective grading. So Janelle had done what she always did. She requested all of Mrs. Crawford's grade distribution data for the past 5 years, student demographics, disciplinary referrals, parent complaints, and the pattern was undeniable. Black students in Mrs. Crawford's classes received lower grades than white students with equivalent test scores. They received more disciplinary referrals for subjective infractions like disrespect and poor attitude. They were recommended for lower track classes despite qualifying for honors. The data screamed bias. Systematic, sustained, damaging bias. So Janelle had scheduled a formal classroom observation, sent 3 emails to Mrs. Crawford, copied Principal Mitchell, followed every protocol for advance notice. Mrs. Crawford had responded to exactly none of them. And now, standing outside a locked classroom door while 35 students watched, Janelle understood why. Mrs. Crawford hadn't ignored the emails because she was disorganized or overwhelmed. She'd ignored them because she didn't believe she had to answer to anyone. Because 28 years of teaching had insulated her from accountability. Because she'd built a reputation as an excellent educator that protected her from scrutiny. And because Janelle was certain now she didn't believe a black woman could have authority over her. Janelle dialed Principal Mitchell's number. He answered on the second ring. "Dr. Foster, I was just about to call you. I'm so sorry. I got stuck in an emergency meeting with the superintendent. Are you here for Mrs. Crawford's observation? I'm outside her classroom right now. She's locked me out." Silence. Then, "She's what?" "She refused to let me enter. Claimed I might be dangerous. Told me to keep my hands visible and not reach for identification. Called security. And just locked the classroom door in my face." "Oh my God!" Mitchell's voice went tight with panic. "Dr. Foster, I am so incredibly sorry. I'll be there in 90 seconds. Please, please don't leave. Let me fix this." "I'm not leaving," Janelle said. "But Principal Mitchell, you should know, this observation just became much more complicated." She hung up and waited. Through the classroom window, she could see Mrs. Crawford teaching as if nothing had happened, writing on the board, gesturing enthusiastically, playing the role of dedicated educator while a state official stood locked out in the hallway. Several students kept glancing at the door. At Janelle, their faces showed confusion, discomfort, and for some of the black students, recognition. They'd seen this before, seen Mrs. Crawford dismiss and demean, seen her treat certain students as threats or problems. They just hadn't seen her do it to an adult with actual power. Principal Mitchell arrived breathless, his face red from running. He was a white man in his late 50s, looking genuinely horrified. "Dr. Foster, I cannot apologize enough for..." He stopped when he saw the locked door. "She locked you out?" "She actually locked the door." "She did." Mitchell knocked sharply. "Linda, open this door immediately." The door opened. Mrs. Crawford's expression was one of self-righteous vindication. "Thank goodness you're here, Paul." This woman showed up claiming to be from the state, but she refused to follow security protocols. She wouldn't show identification. She became aggressive when I asked her to wait for verification, and she even tried to use accusations of racism to intimidate me into. "Linda, stop talking." Mitchell's voice was hard. "This is Dr. Janelle Foster. She is from the state. She's a director of curriculum and standards for the entire state education system. And you just prevented her from conducting a scheduled observation that's been on the calendar for 3 weeks. Mrs. Crawford's mouth opened and closed. "But she didn't. I asked for identification, and she refused." "You told me not to reach in my bag," Janelle said quietly. "You said you didn't know what was in there, that I might be dangerous. You instructed me to keep my hands visible." I was being cautious." Mrs. Crawford's voice faltered. "You were being discriminatory," Janelle corrected. "And we both know it." Mitchell looked between them, understanding dawning. "Linda, did you not respond to any of Dr. Foster's emails about this observation?" I get a lot of emails. I don't always. I thought it might be spam." 3 separate emails, Janelle said, all clearly labeled as official state correspondence, all copied to Principal Mitchell, all confirming this observation and requesting your acknowledgement. She pulled up her phone, showed Mitchell the email chain. Every message marked read with no response. "You read them," Janelle said. "You knew I was coming. You just chose not to acknowledge it." "That's not. I didn't realize." Mrs. Crawford looked at Mitchell desperately. "Paul, tell her I'm a dedicated teacher, that I would never intentionally ignore important correspondence. This is just a misunderstanding. What's your first period class doing right now, Linda?" Mitchell asked, his voice tired. They're working on an assignment. I gave them an article to read while I was dealing with this situation." "The situation," Janelle repeated. "By which you mean denying entry to a state official who's here to evaluate your teaching." Mrs. Crawford's face cycled through several emotions. Confusion, denial, realization, panic. "You're here to evaluate me? I thought..." Paul said the observation was voluntary, that it was just to help me improve my practice. It's voluntary if you're not under review, Janelle said. But you are under review, due to multiple complaints about discriminatory grading practices and differential treatment of students based on race. That's absurd. Mrs. Crawford's voice rose. I treat all my students exactly the same. I'm colorblind. I don't even see race. Your grade distribution data says otherwise. Janelle pulled a folder from a briefcase, slowly, deliberately, making it clear she was reaching for documents, not weapons. Black students in your classes receive an average of 12% lower grades than white students with equivalent standardized test scores. They receive 3 times as many disciplinary referrals. They are recommended for lower track classes at twice the rate. That's because those students don't work as hard. They don't put in the effort. They have attitude problems that affect their performance. Stop. Mitchell's voice was sharp. Linda, stop talking. Right now. But Mrs. Crawford couldn't stop. 28 years of unchecked bias was pouring out. I'm not being discriminatory. I'm being realistic. Some students come from cultures that don't value education the same way. Some students have chip on their shoulder about authority. Some students blame racism whenever they face consequences for their own lack of effort. Mrs. Crawford, Janelle's voice cut through like a knife. Everything you just said is textbook racism. You're attributing academic performance to culture and attitude rather than examining your own biases and evaluation. You're describing black students as having chips on their shoulders when they question your grading. And you're defending grade disparities by blaming the students rather than examining your practices. I am not a racist. Mrs. Crawford's face flushed deep red. I have black students who do very well in my class. Students who work hard and show respect. This has nothing to do with race and everything to do with individual effort and attitude. Then explain the data, Janelle said calmly. Explain why black students with identical test scores receive lower grades. Explain why they are disciplined more frequently. Explain why the pattern is so consistent across 5 years of teaching. Because test scores don't tell the whole story. I grade on participation, attitude, effort, improvement. Subjective criteria that allow you to penalize students you decided have attitude problems, Janelle finished. Subjective criteria that just happen to affect black students disproportionately. Mrs. Crawford looked at Mitchell. Paul, are you going to let her attack me like this? Are you going to let her come into my school and accuse me of being a racist based on some numbers that don't tell the full story? Mitchell's expression was pained. Linda, I've had 6 parent complaints about your grading practices in the past 2 years, all from black families. I dismissed them, told them you were a rigorous teacher, that their children needed to work harder. He paused, something like shame crossing his face. I defended you, and I shouldn't have. I should have looked at the data, should have investigated, should have listened to those families instead of assuming their complaints were unfounded. This is unbelievable, Mrs. Crawford said. 28 years. 28 years of dedicated service, of pouring my heart into the school. And now I'm being railroaded by someone who's been in my classroom for 5 minutes and decided I'm a racist based on selective statistics. I've been in your classroom for 0 minutes, Janelle corrected, because you locked me out, which is another problem we need to discuss. She looked at Mitchell. Principal Mitchell, I need to be very clear about what just happened. Mrs. Crawford saw a black woman claiming to be a state official and decided I was lying. She treated me as a threat. She instructed me to keep my hand visible and not reach for identification. She called security. She locked the door in my face. And she did all of this despite having received 3 separate emails confirming my visit. I was being cautious, Mrs. Crawford started. If I were white, would you have been this cautious? Janelle asked. Answer honestly. The silence was damning. That's what I thought, Janelle said quietly. And that's a real problem here, Mrs. Crawford. Not just the grade disparities, though those are serious. Not just the disciplinary patterns, though those are concerning. But the fundamental belief that black people, whether they are students in your class or officials from the state, are less credible, less trustworthy, more threatening than white people. She closed her briefcase. I came here today prepared to conduct a standard observation. To what you teach, review your materials, interview students, and provide feedback. That's no longer possible. Instead, I'm recommending immediate suspension pending a full investigation into discriminatory practices. I'm also recommending that Riverside High School undergo a comprehensive civil rights audit. You can't do that. Mrs. Crawford's voice broke. You can't destroy my career because of a misunderstanding at the door. I'm not destroying your career because of what happened at the door, Janelle said. I'm recommending action because of a 5-year pattern of discriminatory grading, because of your response when confronted with that data, and because you've demonstrated that your bias extends beyond students to any black person who challenges your authority. She looked at Mitchell. I'll be filing my initial report by end of business today. You'll receive the full audit notice within 48 hours. I strongly suggest you consult with your district's legal team immediately. Janelle turned to leave, then paused. Mrs. Crawford, I want you to understand something. I didn't come here to end your career. I came here to help you see your blind spots and improve your practice. But you couldn't even see me. Couldn't imagine that a black woman might have authority over you. And that tells me everything I need to know about how you see your black students. She walked away, leaving Mrs. Crawford standing in her classroom doorway, her 28-year career crumbling around her. The next 2 weeks were a hurricane. Janelle's report triggered an immediate state investigation. A team of education specialists descended on Riverside High School. They interviewed students, reviewed 5 years of grade data, examined disciplinary records, and talked to parents who'd been complaining for years. What they found was worse than Janelle had documented. Mrs. Crawford wasn't the only teacher with disparate outcomes. She was just the most egregious example of a school-wide culture that tolerated bias, dismissed parent concerns, and protected teachers who harmed black students while claiming high standards. Principal Mitchell, to his credit, cooperated fully, admitted he'd failed to investigate complaints properly, acknowledged that he prioritized protecting teachers over protecting students. But Mrs. Crawford fought hard. She hired an attorney, claimed the investigation was retaliation for her standing up for security protocols, argued that the grade disparities were due to objective differences in student performance, insisted she was a victim of political correctness run amok. She gave interviews to conservative media outlets, positioned herself as a dedicated teacher being destroyed by woke bureaucrats who saw racism everywhere. She found supporters, parents who loved her teaching, former students who credited her with their success, colleagues who insisted she wasn't biased, just rigorous. But then the students started talking. A video appeared on social media, filmed by a student in Mrs. Crawford's class, dated 3 months before Janelle's visit. In it, a black girl, 17, articulate, clearly intelligent, was questioning a grade on her essay. Mrs. Crawford, I don't understand why I got AC. You said the thesis was strong, the evidence was thorough, and the writing was clear. What was wrong with it? Mrs. Crawford's voice tinged with irritation. Ashley, we've discussed this. Your work was adequate, but it lacked the sophistication I expect from honors-level writing. But you gave Sarah an A, and we used the same structure. We even used the same sources. Sarah's essay showed deeper analysis, more nuanced thinking. Can you show me where? I'd like to understand what I'm missing. Ashley, this is becoming an attitude problem. You're not entitled to an A just because you put in effort. Maybe honors English isn't the right placement for you. Have you considered moving to regular track? The video cut off, but the comment section was full of similar stories. She did this to me too. Told me I wasn't honors material even though I had a 3.8 GPA. She called my essay surprisingly well-written. When I asked what was surprising, she said she just expected I'd struggle with complex analysis. She told my mom that black students often have cultural barriers to academic success. My mom has a PhD. More videos surfaced. More stories. A pattern so consistent it couldn't be denied. And slowly, Mrs. Crawford's support started crumbling. The school board called a hearing. Public. Televised. Hundreds of people attended. Mrs. Crawford sat at a table with her attorney, her face set in determined innocence. She prepared a statement, practiced her wounded righteousness. Janelle sat in the audience, watching. This wasn't her fight anymore. The investigation had taken on a life of its own, but she'd been subpoenaed to testify about her initial visit. The board chair, a black woman named Dr. Monica Williams, opened the proceedings. We're here to review the findings of the state investigation into discriminatory practices at Riverside High School, specifically allegations against Mrs. Linda Crawford. Mrs. Crawford, you'll have an opportunity to respond to each allegation. But first, we're going to hear from students who filed formal complaints. Ashley Johnson took the stand first, the girl from the video. Poised, determined, unintimidated. My name is Ashley Johnson. I'm a senior at Riverside High School. I've been in Mrs. Crawford's honors English class for 2 years. And for 2 years, I've watched her treat black students differently than white students. She pulled out a folder. I documented everything. Every time she graded my work lower than identical work by white students. Every time she called on black students less frequently. Every time she made comments about our attitude or effort that she never made to white students. Ashley opened the folder. Page after page of notes. Dates. Times. Specific incidents. February 12th, Mrs. Crawford told me my essay was adequate but unoriginal. She gave it a B-. The next day, she praised Sarah Mitchell's essay as thoughtful and well-researched and gave it an A. We used the same thesis structure and 3 of the same sources. March 5th, I raised my hand to answer a question about To Kill a Mockingbird. Mrs. Crawford looked right at me and called on someone else. This happened 17 times in one class period. I counted. April 18th. Mrs. Crawford sent me to the principal's office for a disrespectful tone when I asked her to clarify an assignment. That same day, a white student openly argued with her about a grade and was told he showed intellectual courage. Ashley's voice never wavered, never got emotional. She just presented the facts with devastating clarity. I have 37 documented incidents over 2 years, and I'm just one student. There are dozens of us. Mrs. Crawford's attorney tried to interrupt. These are cherry-picked incidents taken out of context. No, Ashley said firmly. These are patterns, systematic, consistent, and they've affected my future. I applied to 6 colleges, got rejected from all of them. You want to know why? Because my GPA in Mrs. Crawford's honors classes was 2.7. In every other honors class, I had a 3.8 or above. She looked directly at Mrs. Crawford. You told me I wasn't honors material, that I should consider regular track classes. You made me doubt myself, made me think I wasn't smart enough. And you did it because I'm black, not because of my work, not because of my attitude, because of my skin color. 3 more students testified, then 5, then 10, each with similar stories, each with documentation, each with the same pattern of differential treatment. By the time they finished, Mrs. Crawford's isolated incidents defense had collapsed completely. Then it was Janelle's turn. She walked to the front, was sworn in, and faced the board. Dr. Foster, Dr. Williams said, "Please describe what happened when you arrived at Riverside High School to conduct Mrs. Crawford's evaluation." Janelle recounted everything. The emails ignored. The door slammed in her face. The accusations. The instruction to keep her hands visible. The door locked while students watched. And in your professional opinion, Dr. Williams asked, was Mrs. Crawford's response appropriate? No. Janelle's voice was calm but firm. If she genuinely didn't recognize me, the appropriate response would have been to ask for identification, to call the main office for verification, to politely ask me to wait while she confirmed my identity. Instead, she treated you as a threat. Yes, she immediately assumed I was lying about my position. She instructed me to keep my hands visible, implying I might be armed. She called security. She locked the door. And she did all of this despite having received 3 advance notification emails that she'd read and ignored. Why do you think she responded that way? Mrs. Crawford's attorney objected. Speculation. I'm asking for her professional opinion as an education official with 15 years of experience investigating discriminatory practices, Dr. Williams said coolly. Janelle looked at Mrs. Crawford because she couldn't conceive of a black woman having authority over her. because her bias is so deeply ingrained that she literally couldn't see me as a credible state official. She saw a black woman in a suit and decided I must be lying, must be dangerous, must be trying to trick my way into her classroom. And how does that relate to her treatment of students? If she can't see me, a well-dressed professional with credentials and advance notice, as credible, how does she see her black students? If she assumes I'm a threat, what assumptions does she make about them? The pattern is identical. Black people claiming achievement are viewed with suspicion. Black people asserting themselves are seen as having attitude problems. Black people who don't fit her narrow expectations are dismissed as lying or trying to game the system. The room was silent. "Thank you, Dr. Foster," Dr. Williams said. Mrs. Crawford's attorney stood. "I have questions for Dr. Foster." "Proceed." "Dr. Foster, isn't it true that you came to Riverside High School already believing Mrs. Crawford was biased? That you'd already decided to end her career before you even observed her teaching?" "No." Janelle's voice was steady. "I came prepared to observe her teaching and provide constructive feedback. I wanted to help her recognize and correct her biases. What happened at the classroom door changed that assessment. But you're the one who filed the initial complaint that triggered the investigation, correct?" "I didn't file a complaint. I responded to a complaint filed by a student. My job is to investigate allegations of discriminatory practices. A job that gives you enormous power to destroy teachers' careers based on subjective interpretations of data. Data isn't subjective. A 12% grade disparity between black and white students with equivalent test scores is objective. 3 times as many disciplinary referrals for black students is objective. The pattern is undeniable. Or it reflects different levels of effort, different attitudes, different cultural values. Different cultural values. Janelle's voice sharpened. "You're suggesting that black students have cultural values that make them less academically successful." The attorney realized his mistake. That's exactly what you said. And it's exactly what Mrs. Crawford said during our initial conversation. And it's exactly the kind of racist assumption that's destroyed opportunities for black students in her classroom for years. Dr. Williams banged her gavel. "That's enough. The board has heard sufficient testimony. We'll deliberate and announce our decision tomorrow." The next day, the board issued their finding. Mrs. Linda Crawford was terminated for cause. 28 years of service ended. No pension, no severance, no recommendation for future employment. The board statement was damning. The evidence demonstrates a sustained pattern of discriminatory grading and discipline practices targeting black students. Mrs. Crawford's treatment of Dr. Foster, a state education official, demonstrates that this bias extends beyond students to any black person who asserts authority or questions her judgment. Such bias is incompatible with effective teaching and violates both district policy and federal civil rights law. Riverside High School was placed on probation, required to implement comprehensive bias training for all staff, required to undergo quarterly audits of grade distribution and discipline data. And Principal Mitchell, who'd ignored complaints and defended Mrs. Crawford, was reassigned to a non-supervisory role. The message was clear: ignoring bias, protecting biased teachers, and dismissing black families' concerns would no longer be tolerated. 3 months after the hearing, Janelle returned to Riverside High School, not for an investigation, for an invited visit, to see the changes being implemented. The school looked the same, but the atmosphere felt different. New posters lined the hallways. Every student deserves excellence. Equity is justice. Listen, learn, lead. In Mrs. Crawford's old classroom sat a new teacher, Mr. James Washington, a young black man, fresh out of graduate school, teaching honors English with enthusiasm and high expectations for all students. Janelle watched through the door window as he called on students, black and white, equally, as he praised work based on objective criteria, as he challenged every student to think deeper without questioning their belonging. Ashley Johnson sat in the front row, participating actively, confident, thriving. After class, she saw Janelle and ran over. "Dr. Foster, I didn't know you were visiting." "Just checking on progress," Janelle said, smiling. "How are you doing?" "Amazing. Mr. Washington is incredible. He actually believes in us. All of us." Ashley's face lit up. And guess what? I got into college. Full scholarship to Howard University. That's wonderful. Ashley, I'm so proud of you. It's because of you, because you listened, because you believed us when we said something was wrong. Ashley's eyes filled with tears. Mrs. Crawford almost convinced me I wasn't smart enough for college, that I should lower my expectations, that black students like me just couldn't compete at the highest levels. She was wrong, Janelle said firmly. You were always smart enough, always capable. She just couldn't see it. I know that now, but for so long, I believed her, thought the problem was me. Ashley wiped her eyes. Thank you for showing me it wasn't. That evening, Janelle sat in her office reviewing progress reports from Riverside High School. The changes were real, measurable. Grade disparities had decreased by 80%. Disciplinary referrals for black students had dropped by 60%. Parent complaints had nearly ceased. More importantly, black students were thriving, enrolling in honors classes, applying to competitive colleges, believing in their own potential. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Hello. Dr. Foster. A woman's voice. Hesitant. This is Linda Crawford. Janelle sat up straighter. Mrs. Crawford. I wanted to. I've been doing a lot of thinking since the hearing. A lot of reflecting. Linda's voice was thick with emotion, and I wanted you to know you were right. Janelle said nothing, just listened. I spent 28 years thinking I was a good teacher, thinking I was helping students, thinking my high standards were pushing them to excellence. Linda's voice broke, but I was hurting them, hurting black students by assuming they were less capable, by grading them more harshly, by viewing their confidence as attitude problems. Why are you telling me this? Janelle asked. Because I need you to know that I see it now. I see what I did. I see the damage. And I'm ashamed. Linda paused. I can't undo it. Can't give Ashley and the others back the opportunities one destroyed. But I can admit that I was wrong. That you were right about me. That my bias was real and damaging even though I couldn't see it at the time. What are you going to do now? Janelle asked. I don't know. I can't teach anymore. No school will hire me. But maybe I can speak about what I learned. Talk to other teachers about implicit bias. About how you can be absolutely convinced you're fair while systematically harming students. That would be valuable, Janelle said carefully, but it needs to be genuine, not performative, not about rehabilitation of your image. I know, and it might not matter. I might spend the rest of my life being known as a racist teacher from the viral videos. Linda's voice was hollow, but if even one teacher hears my story and examines their own biases before they hurt students the way I did, maybe that's something. After Linda hung up, Janelle sat in silence. She didn't forgive Linda Crawford. The damage was too severe, the harm too systematic, the years of ignored complaints too damning. But she appreciated the acknowledgement, the genuine recognition of wrongdoing. Some people never got there, never examined their biases, never admitted their harm. Linda Crawford had. Too late for Ashley and dozens of other students. But maybe, in time to prevent other teachers from following the same destructive path. Janelle stood at a podium addressing a packed auditorium of educators at the annual state teaching conference. Behind her, a slide showed statistics from Riverside High School, before and after data, grade disparities, disciplinary patterns, college admission rates. 1 year ago, Riverside High School was failing its black students while claiming to maintain high standards. Today, after comprehensive bias training and systematic reforms, black students are thriving at rates equal to or exceeding their white peers. She clicked to the next slide. A photo of Ashley Johnson at Howard University. This is Ashley. She was told by her teacher that she wasn't honors material, that she should lower her expectations, that maybe she had cultural barriers to academic success. Janelle paused. Today, she's a freshman at Howard University on a full academic scholarship, studying pre-law, determined to become a civil rights attorney. The audience applauded. Ashley's potential was always there. Her capability was always there. What was missing wasn't talent or effort. What was missing was a teacher who could see past her own biases long enough to recognize excellence in a black student. Janelle clicked again. Statistics on implicit bias in education. The teacher who failed Ashley isn't unique. Studies show that black students receive lower grade for identical work. They are disciplined more harshly for the same behaviors. They attract into lower-level classes despite qualifying for advanced coursework. And most teachers who do this don't think they are biased. They think they are maintaining standards, being objective, holding all students to the same expectations. She looked around the auditorium. I came to Riverside High School to conduct a routine observation. Instead, the teacher I was evaluating treated me, a state education official with advance notice and proper credentials, as a threat. She slammed a door in my face, told me to keep my hands visible, called security. Why? Because she couldn't imagine that a black woman in a suit might actually be exactly who she claimed to be. Because her bias was so deep that even when confronted with evidence, she chose to believe I was lying rather than question her assumptions. Janelle's voice softened. That same bias informed how she saw her students, how she graded their work, how she interpreted their behavior, and it destroyed opportunities for dozens of black students over nearly 3 decades. She clicked to her final slide. A quote, "Bias unchecked becomes injustice institutionalized." Check your biases. Today, now, before they harm students who deserve better, before you become the teacher who locks the door on potential, before you steal futures because you can't see excellence in skin that doesn't look like yours. The audience sat in uncomfortable silence. Then someone started clapping. Then another, until the entire auditorium was applauding, not because they were comfortable, but because they knew she was right. After the conference, a young white teacher approached Janelle hesitantly. "Dr. Foster, I wanted to thank you. That story about Riverside High School made me realize I've been doing some of the same things. Not as severely, maybe, but I give my black students less benefit of the doubt. I interpret their behavior more negatively, and I convinced myself it was about individual students, not about race. What are you going to do differently?" Janelle asked. "I'm reviewing all my grades from last semester, looking for patterns. I'm also going to start asking myself, if this were a white student doing the exact same thing, how would I respond? And I'm going to be honest about the answer." "That's exactly right," Janelle said. "The work starts with honesty, with seeing your biases even when it's uncomfortable." The teacher nodded. "That Mrs. Crawford, the one who locked you out, do you ever think about her?" "Every day," Janelle admitted, "because she's not a monster. She was a normal teacher who let her biases go unchecked for so long that they became second nature. And there are thousands of teachers like her, good people who are doing harm without realizing it. Do you think she really changed? In the end?" Janelle considered. "I think she recognized what she'd done. Whether that translates to lasting change, I don't know. But recognition is the first step. Everything else follows from that moment of uncomfortable truth." Far away, in a small apartment in another state, Linda Crawford watched Janelle's conference speech on YouTube, watched herself be held up as an example of what not to do, watched her failure be broadcast to thousands of educators, and felt, for the 10,000th time, the crushing weight of recognition. She'd spent 28 years thinking she was helping students reach their potential. Instead, she'd been blocking their path, clipping their wings, teaching them to doubt themselves, all while convinced she was maintaining standards and holding students accountable. The teacher had denied the black woman from entering the class. Minutes later, that woman had ended her career. But more than that, she'd forced Linda to see herself clearly for the first time, to see the bias she denied, the harm she'd caused, the future she'd damaged. Linda would spend the rest of her life carrying that knowledge, and maybe, just maybe, using it to prevent other teachers from making the same mistakes, from locking doors on potential because they couldn't see excellence in unexpected places, from treating black brilliance as suspicious rather than celebrating it, from letting bias masquerade as standards while real talent went unrecognized and unrewarded. The door had been locked. But now, finally, it was opening. For Ashley, for the students at Riverside High, for every black student who'd ever been told they weren't good enough, smart enough, worthy enough, when the only thing they weren't was white enough to be seen clearly. The door was opening, and this time, no one was standing in the way. Moral lesson. Bias doesn't require conscious malice. It thrives in the assumption that you're objective when you're not. When you can't see competence, authority, or excellence in people who don't match your expectations, you reveal more about your limitations than theirs. Teachers hold immense power to open doors or close them, to nurture potential or destroy it. Every assumption you make about a student's capability based on their race becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy when you grade them more harshly, discipline them more severely, and doubt them more reflexively than their white peers. The black woman you dismiss as incredible might be the person evaluating whether you keep your job. The black student you tell isn't honors material might be the one who changes the world, if you don't destroy their confidence first. Check your biases, question your assumptions, and never lock the door on potential simply because it doesn't look like what you expected excellence to be.